So let me welcome you to Chat with Matt. My purpose in creating Chat with Matt was to find speakers who had something interesting to say and recognized experts like my wife, Peggy. We're going to be talking about Zoom, which is a very important tool for you in your job search and in your networking. And we're going to give you some coaching on how to go about doing that. It has been my experience that people who introduced me do a very poor job of it. So I always let my guests introduce themselves. They do a much better job telling you more important things. So housekeeping items, everybody should be on mute, number one. Number two, if your name is not in this box in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, if you put your mouse over it and right mouse click, you can rename yourself. So it has your name. If you want to get fancy on a networking meeting, you can add your email address and that'll enable people to get a hold of you. We have a chat box and I'm moderating this event. So I will be checking the chat box for your questions. We'll try to leave a reasonable amount of time at the end for your questions. But you can feel free to drop them in the chat box as you think of them. If you're like me, you're beginning to forget things. So at the moment you remember it, please put it in the chat box. So it's now 4:02. We have just one member in the waiting room who's joining us, and then we'll kick it off. So I guess I don't like to punish the people who bothered to show up on time, so I'm going to share the spotlight with my wife, and she's going to take it from here, and I'm just going to ask her questions. Just keep her on track. So, Peggy, the floor is yours. Please, why don't you tell everybody about your background and about your journey, how you got to where you are today?
Sure. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. And please, if you have questions or if I make a comment, let us know, because sometimes it's hard if you wait until the end. It's almost like you forgot about it, or your question you think isn't as important. And I don't want you to be focusing on your question. I want you to be listening and engaged. My background is communication. At the moment, I call myself a virtual communication expert because as of when COVID came along, I realized that we were all going to be doing a lot more communication virtually. And so in order to be successful, we needed to really understand that. But to go back into my own history, I'm a licensed speech language pathologist and a school administrator, and I spent over 25 years in public education. But as an administrator, I was doing all the things that anyone else does in a business. I supervised, I hired, I interviewed. I even sometimes had to encourage people to leave or fire them. So I had all the experiences. I created budgets. I did all the things that everybody does. And about 10 years ago, I decided that even though I was working with adults in a mentoring administrative capacity, that I would move to really working with business professionals, helping them be effective communicators, because I realized that oftentimes that was the breakdown. That was where they were struggling. And today, I think a lot of people are struggling because of lacking the real understanding of how to successfully communicate on a video conference, whether it's one-on-one or we're going to talk about some things, even if you're in a group meeting like we are today, everybody can still see you. So don't say, well, I'm just kind of showing up. We still want you to look professional.
This is not a TV show. This is a participatory event. Peggy just highlighted to me a new issue. We talk a lot about communication issues and networking and how it affects everything. And the latest twist on what I thought I knew is the first element, the virtual handshake. And if you think about meetings you attend, when we could meet in person, the first thing you did was you shook hands with people and perhaps exchanged business cards. Not as easy to do. So, Peggy, why don't you pick up on that point?
Sure. You're right, Matt. We used to go to a meeting and the first thing you do would meet somebody, you would shake hands. And because when you shake somebody's hand, you release the hormone oxytocin, which is considered the trust hormone, you oftentimes just built a bond from that. What I also think was sometimes people relied on that more than they relied on all the other aspects of communication. So remember, you only have about 10 seconds or less to make a great first impression. And that virtual handshake, since it's not happening with you reaching across and shaking someone's hand, when you click join the meeting, you are really starting that virtual handshake. How do you introduce yourself when you're meeting with somebody? It has to do with, first of all, looking into the camera. And I'm going to show you, if I look at Matt, you don't feel like I'm really talking to you in the same way as now when I'm looking in the camera. So when you pop on that screen, if you are looking at the person, they don't really feel like you're looking at them. They see you. If you really look into your camera when you greet them, and then think about, are you smiling? Are you leaning in and really welcoming? I'm nice to meet you. What's the tone in your voice? That matters. If you are sitting back like this, kind of, hi, that's not as welcoming. That's not a great handshake. If I go, hi, nice to meet you, you feel a connection.
It's very important to make that personal connection with people. And it is actually a little harder to do on Zoom. But, this is a lot of the things that we try to teach people about Zoom. The two of us try to teach people about Zoom is what we used to do when we met people in person. I can recall you having some sessions with a doctor's office where you were talking about greeting people with a smile. It makes quite a difference.
And you're right. And meeting people, since COVID, since we've been on Zoom, I have had new clients. I've done training with people that I've never met, and yet I've connected. I actually did 3 intense training sessions for a private equity firm in Boston doing diversity training. And by the end of the time, when we were sort of debriefing, one of the comments, or several of the partners' comments, were, I really feel like I know you, that I met you, at first I was concerned because it was on Zoom that we wouldn't make this connection. Of course, we made that connection because I really worked hard at it and made sure that I really spoke to them. I also made that connection because on Zoom, it's really important that you listen. I asked questions. I made sure that I wanted them to talk to me, and I really listened to what they had to say. That's also part of really connecting and having that virtual, not just handshake, but virtual connection.
Peggy,
I think
do you mind if I interrupt
I
you?
do.
I'm sorry, somebody's asking a question. Yes.
So do you mind if I interrupt you? I love the way that you're looking at us. I don't know how you do that. And it's interesting because it's hard for me to be talking to you without looking at you. So, and it's also hard for me to listen to you without looking at you. Just looking at the camera, it seems like I don't know where you are. You're in that. How do you do this?
A great question. And
we'll get to that.
Well, I know. I like
part
to
of the technical stuff, isn't it?
Let's answer the question now. We don't
Sure.
have a prepared speech. I think this is more important to have it now. Okay. First of all, when you're listening to me, it's not as important to look in the camera because you can just listen to me and it's okay. So put that aside. Number 2, it is important to look in the camera, and it takes practice. It doesn't come natural. First of all, no aspects of effective communication are innate. We all are born with the ability to talk. That's because we're human. We have the ability to communicate. We don't all have the ability to be great communicators. And so I have to practice. I'm telling you, yes, it would be much easier for me to just be looking at all of you, but you wouldn't feel I was connecting. A tip, wherever your camera is on your computer, whether it's up, take a little Post-it, draw an arrow, say camera, put whatever gives you a cue, and put it there. So there's a visual that's reminding you to look. If you, after today, look in the camera 25% of the time, that's probably 25% of the time more than you were yesterday. And so that's great. Number two, you're right. When I'm talking to somebody, I sometimes also look at them because I want to get their body language. I want to see how they're responding. And if I'm just looking in that camera, I can't do it. It's a dance. It takes practice. You're not going to be great tomorrow morning, but you will improve if you just say, okay, something that's going to give you a cue to at least try to do it some of the time. Does that, I'm sorry, your name just says JS. So what is
I am JS. So
oh, you're
thank you very much,
JS.
Peggy.
Okay.
That really
JS,
does help
It's
me.
actually JS.
Did that
I'm actually JS. Thank you,
okay.
Peggy.
Did that
Very, very
answer your
helpful.
question and help?
Yes, you did. Thank you, Peggy.
Perfect. Okay, Matt, now we can go
Yeah,
on.
so, I have found Zoom to be fabulous. I can't say enough nice things about it. Most of the time, I used to meet people just over the phone, and Zoom is just so much more engaging. It's a very powerful networking tool, and we should be very fortunate that everybody's getting into it. So to make all of you more effective, we're going to talk about the technical aspects of appearing engaged and getting all of your lighting and cameras set up and so forth. And I think that's the next subject we should talk about, Peggy.
Sure. All right. When I told you that I really embraced and started doing a lot of research on being an effective communicator on Zoom. And so one of the first things I did is a client of mine who I helped her reinvent herself a little bit, had been a TV anchor for about 30 years. And so I called her up and I said, okay, let's talk about what you do. Let's talk about what I need to know when I'm on Zoom. Now, no, I don't have a camera crew, but she said to me, the camera crew, when you're on television, they're really concerned about how do you look and how do you sound on that camera. So let's begin with how you look. Let's look professional. Before COVID, if you were going to go meet somebody, if you were going to go to somebody's office and have a meeting, you would dress. Now, depending on what company, what your business is, whether you wore what would be more like corporate casual or whether you put on a jacket with or without a tie or whatever, but we all dressed differently than like I see people on some of these Zoom calls in sweats. And I think Matt was referring to it. Even if you've just come to a networking meeting, people are looking at you. Do you look professional? Do you look like you took this meeting and made it important, or did you just kind of show up? So your appearance is important. It's also important for people, what's in your background. You don't want it to be too busy or too distracting. You also want it to look professional, and professional could just be a blank wall. It doesn't have to be a bookcase. I don't really see right now backgrounds that are disturbing, but I'm telling you, I've been on calls where I've seen people's unmade beds. I was on a call where somebody was leading the call. I was not participating. It was like a meeting where I didn't even have a voice unless I chatted in the chat box. And yet the person leading the call was sitting in front of an open closet door, and I could see her clothes hanging. Now, all she had to do, you could see the door was a white door. All she had to do was pay attention and close that door, and it would have been a beautiful white background. But no, it was distracting. And what does that say about her? She surely wasn't paying attention to her professional duties. She was just clicked on Zoom and she was ready. So all
I
of
had, just to interrupt you for a second, I had, along these lines, I had a call yesterday with one of our members, a little coaching session, and she had a bookcase to her left, and the way the camera was focused, it was like a house of mirrors. The angle of the shelf gave a distorted view. I was actually getting a little seasick because it just didn't make any sense. So I had her adjust her camera so that the bookcase was more or less square with her where she was sitting.
Well, that's because her camera really wasn't square, and you have to make sure that it is square. The other thing I've seen is people who have, let's say, ceiling fans. I've been on calls, and there's just the way the camera is set, you can see that ceiling fan, and so instead of listening to the person, forget looking at them. I'm just like mesmerized with the ceiling fan. So if you're looking at that ceiling fan, you are not focusing on what they're saying. You can't. You're so busy engaged in watching that. So,
and then sometimes the books are so close to where you're sitting that you can read the titles, and that's another distraction.
Or you don't want a plant growing out of the middle of your head. You need to just look at that. You also need to look at where you are in the frame. You don't want to be back too far, because if you're back too far, you look like you're not really engaged in the conversation. And it's not like we're sitting in an auditorium that there are people in the first, second, third row, or you're sitting in around a table and people are at a distance. We can all be up close and personal, and let's do that. That's important.
Peggy, 15-second critique of my own background here. I'm
Sure.
in my dining room, and that's my living room.
Yes. Oh, you want me to give you a critique?
Yeah, 15-second critique.
Okay. Well, first of all, Mike, my critique of you is you are too far from the camera. That's the most important thing I can tell you. You're
Okay.
And I would angle the camera a little bit so that the red light doesn't look like it's coming out of your head. Those are the only
Okay,
two.
got it.
There's nothing. I like your living room, dining room. It's very clean, but you're too far back. I can barely see you.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
You're
That's
welcome.
good.
If there's anyone else that wants me to give a critique, let me know. Arthur, I'm going to tell you, you're looking like you're leaning back, and you're like, yeah, and a lot of that has got to do with changing the angle of the camera. It might not be changing how you're sitting. You don't want the camera. You don't want the camera looking up your nose. So, and you might have to play around with it. And lighting is important because you want your lights to make your face shine. I don't really care if my background is kind of off. And I said to Matt, I think it's got to do with the time of the day in this room that I'm in. And I have 3 different lights. Sometimes my background is really gray. Sometimes it's really white. It really is white, and I can't control that, but I can always make sure that my face is clear and people can see it, because people are watching your mouth. That's how we communicate. We don't just hear the words, we read people's lips.
Peggy?
Yep.
John Calfee.
Hi, John.
Hi. I have this problem where I'm getting the reflection of you, the light off of my glasses. At least I see it in my frame. What light do I need? How do I need to
You need a light.
try?
You need
Yep.
lights in front of you, not behind you.
Okay.
So that's and you also, I can see your light fixture.
Yeah, that's because
and it might be just turning your computer screen. It's not, sometimes it just has to do with turning things, and you want to make sure that there's light in front of you. And I will say that glasses, and you need glasses, and it's just, that's life. I mean, but they will reflect, and some people's glasses reflect more than others, and there's nothing you can do about it. I'm very lucky in the sense that I see better on the computer with no glasses. So if I was watching TV, I need them, driving the car, but here, no. Anybody else have a question? Because this is great. This is what, yes, David?
Yeah, I'm experimenting with the camera here because I've just finished an assignment. So I've got my own equipment and my company's equipment. The last year, I've been doing Zoom calls, camera up here, and you see there's.
I like that better. Wherever you change
Yeah.
to, that looks so much better, David.
Yeah, well, that's where I would normally do it. It's just when you said, look at the camera. My problem is that you're on a laptop about, I don't know, 1.5 feet below where the camera is. Here's the camera.
Okay, you know what, David? I had the same problem. When I started doing Zoom, I couldn't figure out why. I was working with some people and they were telling me I was looking down and everything. That's because on a laptop, I have a laptop too, my camera is at the bottom where the laptop and the keyboard come.
Mine
Okay,
too.
guess
Terrible
what?
shape.
I had to get an external camera.
Yeah.
You
Well,
cannot, it's not going to work.
I mean, I'm using an external.
And Dave, if I
camera
can, David, if I can point out to you, if you look behind you
here.
in the picture on Zoom, okay, you see the ceiling crease.
Yeah. Yes.
It looks very odd because your camera is at the bottom and it's looking up.
This camera now, this camera is on top of. So
Right.
Another thing you can do, of course, you can raise you can lift your monitors, lift your computer up, which will also help. So you're going to have to play around with it, but you might want to get an external camera. That's what I had to do because I realized I was trying to do all kinds of things, raising my computer. It was just never working. So an external camera definitely solved that problem.
I'm using an
So
external.
we
camera.
live in a great time. All of this technology is so inexpensive and you need to invest.
No, I am using an external camera, and it just so happens that my home office has a ceiling crease in it. The other question really would be this picture here.
Yeah, the picture might not be, so turn your is it a laptop or whatever, or your monitor so that or move yourself. I mean, sometimes I've moved my chair at more of a little bit of an angle. So you just have to play around with it. If a picture's really bad, or when you're on Zoom, just take the picture off the wall.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, actually,
nobody's going to be able to see that nail hole or the little.
Actually,
so, you know, there.
Yeah, I've kept the picture because people say, "What's that?" and then it's something to talk about.
Oh, good. I didn't say that you had to. I'm just saying, you just play around with it. Okay. Anybody else have a comment before we go on?
How do you reconcile looking at the camera so that it appears as though you're looking at the speaker when there are pictures elsewhere? And if you covered that previously, I apologize.
That's okay. First of all, you can do two things. Number one, if I'm looking at the camera, it doesn't matter where you are. Do you feel like I'm looking at you?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so it doesn't matter. On my screen, you are at the bottom of the. I have my screen in gallery view, even though
Me too. So, but
okay,
you just
you are on the bottom, but when I look in the camera, you still feel. If you feel to help you, you can. If you have an external camera, you can slide the camera along to make it closer to where the person is. If you're in the bottom, but I can make you more in the middle, so it's easier for me to look up and down at you if I want to look at you. But you don't feel that I'm looking at you. When I look down, you feel I'm not looking at you. And when I look directly in the camera, no matter where you are on this screen, you feel like I'm looking directly at you. It's fascinating, but that's what it is. Each person feels that I'm looking directly at them because I'm looking into the camera.
It's funny when someone is speaking, you want to look at them and
look at them. That's okay.
The camera to appear as though you're meeting their gaze when you're not, right? It's just what we have to deal with.
Okay, Joyce, you know what? Don't worry about that so much. I was saying that to JS too. You don't have to worry about staring into the camera so much when somebody else is talking. You can look up periodically, but you don't have to because they're not getting that. If they're really looking at the camera, then they're only going to periodically look down at you. So there isn't a disconnect.
Okay.
Okay. So why don't we try it? You look in the camera and talk, and I'm going to look at you. Okay.
Great. So I am looking in the camera and I'm fine with that if I'm speaking. But if you were speaking, I would want to see your face and my eyes would go down to wherever the picture was on the screen.
Correct. But now that when you were looking in the camera, I was looking at you. Did that bother you?
No, because I couldn't tell. Do you know what I
That's
mean?
right.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, great.
So you don't have to worry. There's
And it
nothing to
looked
worry
as though I
about.
was looking at you. Is that correct?
Right. I felt like you were looking at me. When I'm looking at you talking, it looks like you're looking directly at me because you were looking into the camera.
Great.
So my view of you looking at you when you're looking into the camera is you're looking at me.
Terrific.
And I know, and those are good questions. And if you know, we can keep going over it. It's fine. Okay.
Peggy, I'm sorry,
I
I'm
think the
going to
only
ask another
topic we
question.
didn't discuss yet was,
Wait a minute. JS had another question. Yes.
I'm sorry, I might have another question. So
No, it's
I
okay.
am-
Don't,
I'm like-
no apologies. We want
I'm-
this to be like this. I love it.
I'm about a foot from my camera, but I feel like I'm far out.
Then
And
get a
I'm
little,
already, I mean, it seemed like I'm already almost with my nose on the screen. So how do you all do? Because I can see everyone. And John, you've changed. I mean, so you all come in. If I'm here, I don't know.
so then you don't want to be in like this. That's not good. But you also don't want to be like this.
But there's
Andrea,
nothing.
You
There's
look
nothing.
fine. You don't look like you're too close.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. And you know, you can ask the person you're talking to, do you get a feel?
Mm.
Also, you are aware before you get on Zoom that you can check how you look, right? Does
Yeah, but I can't
everybody
change
do
the
that?
Zoom. But I
Huh?
can't change the Zoom, right? There's nothing I can do. I cannot change the Zoom or the camera to see me.
no, you
face.
can't.
No, you have to change yourself. You can't change that.
Okay.
You
Okay.
have to change where you are. Move your chair closer or farther away.
There might be a camera that you can do that, but I don't know.
I don't think we
I
have.
don't
But
think- I haven't found
all
it.
of you should remember before you click join meeting, go into the file and check your video. And don't just say, well, I checked it this morning, because one, the time of day impacts how you look. And also you can just sometimes touch if you've got an external camera, you can touch it, you move it, things change. Before every call, whether I just got off one, I still check it again. Okay? Anybody else have any?
Your lighting changes over the course of the day, so you have to
Very much.
always take a look at your picture. And I think that's one of the interesting things about Zoom is that you can see yourself. You know, if you were in a face-to-face meeting, you would not be able to see yourself. We had a question about mock interviews. And I think, again, the Zoom tool is something that will give you a clear advantage if you practice. I don't know if you can record a meeting on a free account. I assume you can.
I think you can.
But if you couldn't, you know, we're talking about $150 here. You can have a paid account where you can have unlimited numbers of, you know, up to like 300 people on a call and over 3 people and no time limit. It's not a big investment in your career. But let's talk about the mock interview. How would you set that up, Peggy? Someone's going to have a Zoom interview. Walk them through the steps.
Okay, well, first, before we get to that, I think because you had told me, I talked about how you look. I wanted to talk a little bit about how you sound, which is
Okay.
also important on an interview. And if you remembered, I said your lighting is really important because people really are reading your lips. Think about the fact that you pay more money in the theater to sit down closer. Why? Because you can have a better view, not because you can really hear better, because in a great theater, the sound system is great no matter where you are, but you can't see the person's face. So that's important. That's why lighting's important also. Think about when you're speaking to really almost speak slow, and this is true whether it's on Zoom or not. You have to slow down your speech. One, it helps them process. 2, you speak more clearly. Number 3, remember to think about speaking with passion, with enthusiasm, with a smile on your face, and that because again, you want to connect with the person you're talking to. If you have no affect and and we'll go to the interview, you're talking on an interview, you're nervous, you know what you want to say, you become very serious, and you just look in that camera and you talk at the person. You want to talk to the person. That's different. That means think about your facial expressions. That means you may want to do a little bit of hand gestures, but not too fast, because then it becomes very wavy and distorted.
The technical aspect is that the refresh rate on Zoom is not as strong as on your TV set. So
Right.
you have to be aware of that. And if you wave your hands around, things get blurred.
Too much, but that doesn't mean that, like, if you're talking on an interview and you say, well, there are 3 things, you can do that. The other thing is the rule of 3. You're on an interview. People cannot process lots and lots of information. Our brains can only hold groups of 3. So therefore, if you tell them, tell me what you did, don't tell them 5 things. Pick the 3 most important that are relevant for this interview, or at least relevant for this initial point that you're trying to make. If you remember, I like to think about talking almost like you're talking in bullet points. And that's because people can process them. Remember, on an interview, as well as when you're even networking, the power and importance of wait time. You want to say something and then give the person that's listening a chance to process it. Or maybe even a chance, if you're in an interview, to ask you a follow-up question. If you're just talking too fast, they're never going to be able to interrupt you, or they're not going to want to interrupt you. They could. And so therefore, they're not going to ask you questions. And you want an interview to be a conversation. Conversations are the best. Having a dialogue is the best way to sell yourself. It's also the best way to build a relationship. So does that help, Matt? Is there anything else about a mock interview that's important? How you look, checking everything out. I was talking to one of the FECG members a while ago who was, when she was setting up for an interview, she actually Zoomed with a friend, and they, women do this a little more than men. She actually tried a couple of outfits on for her friend, decided which one looked better.
Yeah.
And again, you might laugh, but different colors come across different on Zoom than they do. I was wearing a chocolate brown shirt, sweater outfit a couple of weeks ago on a call with a colleague, and she said to me, "Wow, that's a beautiful purple." And I said, "No, it's not." And the point is that chocolate brown turned purple on Zoom. But if I was with you, you would never think it was anything but chocolate brown. Red, Beth, you might like red, but red bleeds a lot. It makes your face bleed. It's not, it's fine normally, but on Zoom calls, especially if you're going for an interview, I would not recommend red. I would not recommend stripes or plaids.
Yeah.
Because they blur together. Matt had this shirt when we first started Zoom, and it was a really nice striped shirt. He got on Zoom. I was dizzy. Every single one of the lines went together. It was just that kind of a stripe. And in person, you would never have guessed it. So my recommendation is solid colors, and either and maybe a little contrast. Women, a nice piece of jewelry if you want something that sparks things off. And actually, I talk about looking professional. I think for women, we're luckier. You could just wear like a collarless shirt and nobody can tell the fabric, whether it's silk or cotton. But if you put on a nice necklace with it, it's going to look dressier. So you can really get away with things that a man, if you don't have a collared shirt, you don't have a collared shirt. You can't pretend it's collared. It doesn't work.
I would share with you, I had a candidate who did his, I encourage all my candidates to do Zoom interviews. Everybody knows I have a search practice, I hope. And when I prep my candidates for their Zoom calls, one of my candidates actually wore a suit to his Zoom call. And he said the person who was interviewing him noticed that he was wearing a suit and was very impressed that he took the occasion so seriously. And to Peggy's point, we have this great tool called Zoom. You can record yourself, but actually when you're on Zoom, even if you're not recording it, you can see what you look like. And you just have to take notice of the things that are around you and how you want to treat them. Lighting, pictures on the wall, furniture, open closet doors. You want to take the time to really look around.
Right. And to Matt's point, think about when you watch, let's just go to CNN because I'm like a CNN junkie. Watch when they interview different people and how they look on Zoom or Skype or whatever they're doing. Think about the people that get on, Dr. Fauci, some of the, even the newscasters. What are they wearing? They're wearing a jacket and a tie. They are dressed like they were going, to a wedding, so to speak. And the women are dressed, they really look dressed up. What you see is, it's not that they look dressed, they look professional. They are taking the fact that they're on this call, sitting either maybe in their office or their home office, or maybe sitting in their kitchen, but they take the call seriously. And how you look says, do you feel like you're a professional? I would say that even when I would go do a talk in person, I would say, if I could have said everything I've said, excuse me, and you would, I'm giving you value and you would respect it, but you're respecting me if I look like I just finished working out at the gym versus dressed like I'm a professional, you still would be suspect to some of the things I said. And let's go, I do a lot of work with unconscious bias and training clients and companies on understanding that. That's something that we have unconsciously. You look at somebody, wow, they look professional, or look at them, they're not taking it seriously. It's unconscious, but it's real.
Yeah. The sad part of life is you don't get a second chance to make a good first impression.
And actually,
people make decisions, people that you've been talking to for a long time, you have a little bit more flexibility. But that initial impression of what you look like, when back in the old days, and you're not going to believe this, when we actually met face to face, our meeting place here in Westport is about 1.5 miles from where Peggy and I live. And I put on a jacket and tie for every meeting because that was probably the only time people actually met me. Now on Zoom, they're meeting me virtually. But still, you want to make a good first impression. Very important.
Right. Bill, I want to say, why are you so far back from the camera?
Because so this is not how I do the interview. When I do the interview, I'll have my seat up and I'm closer to the camera, probably more like this. And I have a light on over here that's bright. If I do that though, it starts to cut off the blood in my legs for if I have it for too long. So anyway, long story short, this is the way it is.
Have you tried then standing? Do you have, you could stand? I've invested in all kinds of stuff. I also have a stand that I can put my laptop on so I can, it'll be higher so I can stand. I'm only going to share this. I respect that it's hard. And so I ask you, so now I say, please lean back. It's okay. I don't want your legs. I have leg cramps. I can totally empathize with you. However, you don't get on all calls and tell people that. And Matt and I were talking before about the fact that even if you're at a group meeting, people are looking at you. And so what are they saying? Oh, that guy, he's sort of detached. I wonder why. Just like the 3 people that I see on my screen who don't have their cameras on. That makes me suspect. Why didn't they turn on the camera? Why don't they can see me? Why don't they want me to see them? Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. It's important. If you took the time to come, you want to connect. You're not going to connect with somebody if you are, we can't see you. That's why Zoom calls are so much more powerful than the old phone conversation. When you get off a call on a Zoom call, even with a total stranger, I know you feel like, well, I met them. And if you walked into Starbucks next week and they lived in the same town and you saw them, you would say, oh, nice to see you again, because you had just met them. If you're on the phone with them, you could be sitting next to them in a restaurant, and unless you really were great at voices, you would never know you met them unless they introduced themselves. So you're meeting people, and you want to meet people and connect.
Yeah, there will come a time, and not too long from now, when we won't remember whether we've actually met people in person or we met them on Zoom. Zoom is very real. I've been doing coaching sessions with some of our new members. If people ask to talk to me, I set up a Zoom call. I don't do telephone calls anymore. I find that I really get to know people. I see their facial expressions, and I know who they are by how they respond to what I'm telling them. And if I'm giving out unwelcome advice, I can see that. And that's a very powerful thing.
It is.
One thing I have found important in an interview is you're on a Zoom call, and so you're looking up, right, at the camera. But I am a note taker, and so I want to periodically take a note on something that's being discussed. So I have found it important to just say, if I'm looking away, please understand, I'm just capturing a note, just so they know. Right?
I think that's
otherwise your head's down and they're, are you disengaged, when in fact it's quite the opposite.
Correct. And I do that too, Joyce. That's a great point, because I will say to people, if I do a lot of coaching. I've been doing a lot of one-on-one coaching on Zoom calls. And if I'm working with a client, yes, I'm trying to look at them and listen to them when they're talking, but sometimes I really need to write down something that they said. So I always say, if I'm looking down, it's because I'm taking notes. I tell them that at the very beginning. And you could even say that before an interview. I know a thought you might ask me something, a thought might come into my head. If I look down, it's because I'm writing a note. And then you don't have to ever say it again. You've done that. The person goes, oh, fine. That also actually says I'm more engaged instead of less engaged.
And they'd know that if you were in person. It's just
Of
when
course,
you're on
and you
Zoom,
wouldn't
you don't
say it
want
in
someone
person.
thinking you're looking at your cell phone when you're capturing a note or something. Yeah.
That's right. And that's an important point, because honesty and transparency is the best way to build relationships. So if you think that somebody is going to question something you're doing, let them know why. I mean, I used to say, even in person, I always turn off your cell phone or make sure that it's not there. Once in a while, you are expecting a call. Maybe you have a sick child at home. And so you say, I'm leaving my phone out. If I see my house number, my child is home sick. Otherwise, I'm not even going to bother with it. But then they know why you've done it. And I mean, I've been in meetings where somebody would say, is that the call? Do you have to take it? Because they respected the fact that you told them you weren't interested in the call. And I'd say, oh, no, that's not. And I would just move on. And that was fine. But it also built that connection, because now I was a real person thinking about something important. And even on Zoom, I always unplug my phones when I'm doing things. But once in a while, if you're expecting a call from a doctor, I'm hoping that I won't, but I might get a call. If I do, please excuse me. You've been honest. They know why. Any other questions? Or Matt, is there something else I forgot?
We were talking about staying in your real estate. I think you did touch on this a bit. Staying in your real estate?
Oh, well, yes. And we were talking a little bit about it. It's tiring how you sit. Bill said he doesn't want to sit too close because it's uncomfortable. That's one of the reasons why Zoom is really exhausting. It's because when you were sitting in a meeting before COVID, you could wiggle around a little bit. You might even be able to get up. There's coffee in the back of the room. If I wanted to go get a cup of coffee, I have to leave the room to go get it. So we have to really, you only have this little box. That's your real estate. And if I'm wiggling around and moving like this, you're all going to be seasick and you're not going to want to listen to me and you're going to get turned off. So you have to hold your body much stiller and your posture needs to be much more erect, and it's tiring. So that's very important. Just like keeping what Matt likes to call a pleasant face. Think about the news reporters when somebody says outlandish remarks, they still kind of try not to show what they're thinking. So when you're talking to somebody, unless you really don't understand, try to listen with a pleasant face. That being said, practice active listening. On Zoom, it's as important, if not more so, than anytime else. Everybody know what active listening strategies are? Somebody want to share one?
Why don't you just tell them, Peggy? It's fine.
Okay, active listening. Number one, when somebody's talking, you don't want to just be waiting for them to take a break so you can add your point. You want to be listening, and it's a dialogue. You want to build on what they said. But you have to clarify, did you understand it? Sometimes the frame freezes and they say something and you don't even know. So you need to clarify. What I heard you say was, or your thinking is, it doesn't have to be verbatim. It can be a summary, or it can be the key point. And then what you do is you add on by saying, and, or just moving on. Yes, okay, now, and then move on. If you say, yes, but that is like you've just lopped them off at the knees. What have you done? You've taken everything they said and you've just said, it's not really important because what I have to say is more important. Yes, but listen to me. So even when you're in an interview, that people tend to do that. They're talking about something, the company asks you a question about something and you say, yes, but, well, no, you don't want to negate anything they've said. You want to add and build on it. John, I see that you're really relating to that. I can't hear you. I still can't. You still haven't unmuted.
Now I'm unmuted. Yeah, no, that's very important. I've done
now you
that
turned
before.
off. You unmuted, but you turned off your camera.
Oh, well, hang on.
Well, you can't have everything.
You know.
Either I can see you or I hear you. I don't get both.
Nope, you have to pick one.
All right. I have another question, but yes, no, that is very important. I have to tell myself, slow down, pause, and look. So that's true at Zoom. I'm still not completely comfortable, although there've been a number of meetings. I have a feeling my camera is actually, I am on an iPad, so to speak, and it's, in order to go horizontal, the camera is sitting right there.
Yep, it's hard.
And so I look at the camera, but I'm almost also looking on the screen. So it looks like my eyes are focused, even though I may be at my head squared. And I don't know what I can do about that. Is there a simple camera you can get for an iPad?
No,
No, I would do your.
One of my clients tried that. He ended up getting a really cheap laptop just so he could use it for Zoom, because an iPad, I know I've worked and I have do like FaceTime or whatever on the iPad, whether it's Zoom or FaceTime. It is not, your phone and your iPad do not give that same sense. If you're just listening and you're at a meeting, the iPad is fine. If you're really having an interview, I recommend not doing it on an iPad
Okay.
or a phone, but definitely on a laptop.
I may have to call Matt, and when I get it, I've got several laptops and a computer.
Mhm.
I used the iPad because it was early on, my concerns were security on Zoom that I think they've addressed, but I wasn't, I didn't want my computer to be hacked, if you will.
I would look at Logitech. They have a little camera. I was trying to pull one off the top of my monitor to show you, but that's what you're seeing me through, so it didn't work. But it's just a little thing that could clip perhaps to the top of your.
I don't know if it does. I have a Logitech too, and it would not go on, it would not work on my iPad.
I haven't tried it, but thank you, Peggy. The other thing I put it in the chat, but I don't know if anyone's monitoring chat. I bought something called a Loom Cube, which is it's about the size of a cell phone, and it basically clips on either the top of your computer, your laptop or monitor, or there's a stand for it, and it puts the light, as Peggy indicated earlier. You put it behind the monitor or behind the, at the top of your laptop, and it shines the light on your.
Yeah, I even have one of these, except it needs one of these. It's another one like you're talking about, except it's a little small, but the cord is going, and I don't think I'm getting the light I need. But you're
Is that
right.
a Loom Cube?
That's not a little cube. That's I think that one's called a ring light.
Okay.
But that's
just wondering-
focused.
This is a Loom Cube. It's this
Yeah.
size. It's like the size of a laptop, and you can adjust how much light you need. I happen to buy the stand because I can use it in different ways, but I can easily suction it right to the top of my monitor or my laptop. And it's
Yeah, and I
gorgeous.
have a circular one that's behind my
Green.
screen, right? It's
Right.
Matt teases me because every time he turns around, I've ordered another light because I'm never happy with the lighting.
Yeah.
Because as you
No,
can see,
if the Loom
it's getting
Cube works,
darker, and my room is getting darker because I'm just sitting here in the dark. But anyway, I should have turned on all the house lights
I
before.
tried to prevent the sun from going down, but I was not successful.
Yet.
Shame on you, Matt.
So-
I did my best.
so Peggy, and I'm not sure if the question was answered, then I apologize, but either through a paid subscription or free, we should be able to, if we want to practice first just by ourselves, we should be able to record ourselves just to see, that
Good.
before I
Yeah.
go on a true mock one.
Yes,
So,
yes.
okay, great.
I believe you
Record
can.
yourself.
As
And-
long, you set up an account and give it a test.
Yeah.
Excuse
Like
me,
some, it's like I tell people about our membership directory. Run as many searches as you want. There's no extra charge. So
Fair
if you have a Zoom account, experiment.
Yeah.
play around with it. It's important to practice. One of my favorite stories about practicing, so that people think, oh, do I have to practice? And Matt will tell you, I'm the queen of practicing. Even though I've done it a million times, I still feel this need to practice. I kind of relate to the fact that many years ago, I read an article about Jay Leno. And here was, to me, he was like the ultimate, stand-up comic. He could just talk. He always felt so natural. And what I learned about Jay Leno is when he was doing The Tonight Show, every Friday when he finished taping the show, he used to leave and he did stand-up comic, whether it was in Las Vegas or other places around the country, oftentimes Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night, because he said if he didn't keep practicing his timing, he was afraid he would lose it. So I say to myself, if Jay Leno had to practice all the time, who am I? I must
Well, he
really need
didn't-
to practice.
He didn't have the
'cause I'm
benefit of your,
close to his ability.
Peggy,
What?
he didn't have the benefit of your coaching.
He didn't have what?
The benefit of your coaching.
Oh.
All he had to do was call you. Would have been
Right,
fixed
he
it right
was-
now.
But so I just think we should keep in mind that practice is really important, and it can only help you, because the most important thing is to feel comfortable. And I'll piggyback on that. You're talking about mock interviews. What I recommend when I coach my clients for an interview, I tell them, think about two things. Think about some questions that you are likely to be asked, or that are more generic so that the information in that question you could use to answer a lot of different questions, and sit down and really type out, write out whatever, everything you would say. That doesn't mean, and I don't want you to memorize it, you're just organizing your thinking. You might want to go through and read it out loud, get used to it so that you really want to own it. Never memorize it. You just want to own it. You might want to delete some things. The same thing is true if you're going on an interview. Before you're doing that, come up with, I would say, 3 to 5 stories that highlight who you are and what you could bring to the organization, what makes you unique. Because remember, an interview is really a marketing tool to sell yourself. And so what you want to do is look at those stories and then think about the kinds of questions that you could use some part of that story to highlight, whether it's your financial skills, whether it's your leadership, your ability to take a risk, solve a problem, whatever it is. And many stories highlight 2, 3, 4 things. So I would first create these stories. And when I say stories, no more than 5 sentences, because that's going to be all that somebody's going to be able to listen to. A beginning, 2 to 3 middle sentences, and an end. And then what attributes or skills or experience that does that story highlight. And those are so important. And then practice them on Zoom, practice them telling them to your friends, telling them to your whoever's living with you, telling them to your dog. I don't care, just practice them. Don't practice them only in your head. If you only say it in your head and you don't say it out loud, it doesn't have the same effect, because what you do is you say what you think you want to say rather than what you really need to say. When you're saying it out loud, you hear yourself and you go, oh, that's not what I meant.
All right, so we're coming to the end here. Meetings, not only in my world, start on time, they end on time. People have, we've committed to, I want to thank all of you for committing to this this timeline. And so I don't want to keep you over. Some people feel self-conscious about leaving. I think the one thing we did talk about earlier and that I want to repeat is that when you're on Zoom, you know, there's maybe a dozen people. People are watching you. You in a person to person, you know, one person, an in-person meeting, you know, it's not as noticeable. But on Zoom, you know, all the people are right there, and these 2 people are talking, and then you don't realize, but people are looking at you. One of the last questions we had was it okay to drink water? Well, you know, people are watching you. You know, if you're gonna, I would put yourself on mute. I do that all the time when I'm on a joint meeting where we're talking back and forth. If I have to do something, I will put myself on mute, or I would turn off my camera. So again, I want to thank Peggy for agreeing to do this chat with Matt. We're going to try to do a few more of them than I've been doing. I've been very much buried with our new website and our fundraising efforts. So thank you all for joining Chat with Matt. If you have not donated recently, please go to our website, our current website, not our new one, and just click that donate button and make a contribution of whatever you can afford. Doesn't have to be a college tuition. All money is fungible, and I can use anything I can get. We're going to be building our website, and we're going to be adding things that we didn't think about. So I need money to do that. Thank you all for joining me on Chat with Matt, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next week. We have Mike Lorelli, who has joined us for this call, and he's going to be talking about the private equity play. And they're the ones who are hiring everybody. So I'm looking forward to Mike's conversation, and you will too.
Right.
Thanks,
And please,
Peggy.
you're welcome. And please, if you have questions, feel free
Yep.
to email me and reach out to me if there's something that I can do to help you. Always want to help everyone.
We're all here to help. We want
Thank
to
you.
see everybody
Thank
working.
you, Bud.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.